Hey, welcome to Tabletop Skirmish Games and part 1 of my How to Play Warhammer 40K series. In this video, I'll be taking you through the introduction and key concepts of the game. In this series, I'll take you through everything you need to know to play your first game of Warhammer 40,000. We'll be going through the basic rules, the key concepts, data sheet, the battle round and all the different phases, and then we'll go through an example mission taking you through every step of setting up the game and playing your first battle. I'll be using the free PDF Warhammer 40,000 core rules booklet, and this is available to everybody, and I'll put a link in the description below so that if you wanted to download a copy and use that as we go through the series, then I think that would be a great idea because you can use the visuals from the screen and then have your own reference to make notes on as we go through each rule. To play a game of Warhammer 40,000, you'll need to select a mission and each player will need to take control of an army. Your army will be made up of all the models you've collected, built and painted, and the size of the army will be decided by the power level or by the number of points you agree on with your opponent. The rules you need for all the models in your army will come on data sheets, and you can find these in the different codexes that are available for all the different factions of the game. Your models will move and fight in units, and a unit can have one or more models chosen from a single data sheet. Your units will have to move around with unit coherency, and a unit that has more than one model must be set up and finish any sort of move as a single group, with all models within 2 inches horizontally and 5 inches vertically of at least one other model from their unit. If a unit has 6 or more models, all models must be within 2 inches horizontally and 5 inches vertically of at least 2 other models from their unit. If a unit cannot end any kind of move in unit coherency, then that move cannot be made. Now let's take a look at engagement range, and this is another key concept of the game. Engagement range represents the zone of threat that models present to their enemies. While a model is within 1 inch horizontally and 5 inches vertically of an enemy model, those models are within engagement range of each other. While 2 enemy models are within engagement range of each other, those models' units are also within engagement range of each other. Now let's take a look at the battlefield, and all battles of Warhammer 40,000 are fought upon rectangular battlefields, and the size of the battlefield will depend on the size of the army that you use, and this will all be decided within the mission guide. A battlefield is also going to have scenery, and this can be anything from junk modelling to just cans of baked beans to full-on proper terrain that you've bought, built and painted. Whatever you use for your terrain, these are called terrain features. We don't need to worry too much about terrain for the basic rules, but if you want to get into a bit more detail, then the Warhammer 40,000 core book does have a lot more rules for various terrain features if you want to introduce that to your game. But for now, we're going to keep it nice and simple and just use some terrain from the collection that looks interesting, and it is recommended though that you have one terrain feature on the battlefield for every 12-inch by 12-inch area rounding up. So that's a good guide to use when setting up your game. Now let's take a look at measuring distances, and distances are measured in inches between the closest point of the bases of the models you're measuring to and from. If a model does not have a base, such as in the case with many of the vehicles, then measure to the closest point of any part of that model. This is called measuring to the model's hull, and you can measure distances anytime you wish. The next rule to look at is the within and wholly within rule. And if a rule says it applies within a certain distance, it applies at any distance that is not more than the specified distance. For example, within 1 inch means any distance that is not more than 1 inch away. If a rule says it affects models that are wholly within, then it only applies if every part of the model's base or hull of a vehicle is within that specified distance. Some within or wholly within rules will apply to units, and if that's the case, then the whole unit has to either be within the distance or wholly within it. Now let's take a look at the dice, and to fight a battle you're going to need some 6-sided dice, and these are going to be referred to as D6. Sometimes a rule will ask you to roll a D3, so here you roll a D6 and halve the value shown on the dice to get the result, always rounding up. Sometimes you're going to get modifiers to add to your dice result, and all modifiers are cumulative. There's also a following order that you must apply the modifiers in. These are division, then multiplication, then addition, and finally subtraction. You can modify a dice roll above 6, but it can never be modified below 1. So if after all your modifiers have been applied, a dice roll would be less than 1, then you count that result as a 1. Some rules will allow you to re-roll a dice roll, and this means that you'll get to roll some or all of the dice again. It's important to note that you can never re-roll a dice more than once, and re-rolls happen before any modifiers are applied. There'll be quite a few times where you have to roll off during a game, and the rules will tell you exactly when to do it. But to roll off, both players will roll 1d6, and whoever scores highest wins the roll off. If there is a tie for the highest roll, then simply make the roll off again. Let's talk about the sequencing rule now. While playing Warhammer 40,000, you'll occasionally find that 2 or more rules are to be resolved at the same time. For example, at the start of a battle round or at the end of the fight phase. If several rules must be resolved at the same time, the player whose turn it is chooses the order to resolve them. The final concept we need to look at in this video is the starting, strength, half strength, and destroyed units rule. The number of models a unit has when it is added to your army is known as its starting strength. Throughout a battle, models will suffer damage and be destroyed. When a model is destroyed, it is removed from play, and while the number of models in a unit is less than half its starting strength, that unit is said to be below half strength. When every model in a unit has been destroyed, the unit is said to have been destroyed. That brings us to the end of part 1, the introduction and key concepts to play Warhammer 40,000. Come and join me for part 2 of the series, where we'll look at the data sheets and modifying characteristics. I hope you enjoyed the video and this gave you a good introduction to Warhammer 40,000 and the key concepts, and I can't wait to see you for part 2 where we work through the data sheets, which really is a fun part of the game as you start to build your army and learn about what each of those units within your army can do. If you liked the video, please hit the like button, subscribe for more videos like this, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so you can keep up to date with all the next parts of this series. I'd like to say a huge thank you to everyone that's helped make this series possible, and so thanks to everyone who's either provided a product or sponsored this video series. I really appreciate it, and thank you so much. I'll put links in the description below to everyone who's contributed to the series, and I'd love it if you went and checked out their websites and supported their work. I'd like to say a huge thank you to my Patreon supporters who make these daily videos possible, and if you're interested in joining the community, it'd be awesome to see you there, and I'll put a link for that in the description down below.